even for me exploring it, I just wanted to show you, like, there's a card deck that I'm currently looking at, for example. I got this from our mutual friend, Steven. He recommended it's UX for tabletop games. So it's kind of a set of, it taps into the standard heuristics that I've seen before from UX, but it just aligns it with, I'm not going to be able to focus it in. I'm also like, And it's me though, I'm still working on a video for this, but it's like, I like the idea that all the heuristics are here and I can access them, but then also I'm not necessarily a board game designer, but the examples that they're using are related to board game design. So I get to learn about these heuristics in a different perspective. It hooks a little bit stronger into my mind, in my opinion.
There's an expression I love. It's called standing on the shoulders of giants. And the other way to express it in a more modern term is curation. You don't need to invent anything today. You can just curate it. And that deck is the curated best knowledge of game design. And that, you combine that deck with this deck, you've just hired for $50 for this deck and $50 for that deck. You've hired access the full knowledge of the card deck industry, right?
Yeah, totally.
That is interesting to me to think about it that way, right? So we just think of card decks as they're just short, snacky, revisitable. They're a memory jogger. They're an amazing randomizer, right? Because you can actually have a stack of one options and a stack of other options and combine one from each, right? So that's an amazing randomizer. You could pick a color and an animal and come up with a pink or a fruit, like a pink banana, a yellow apple. You know, you can combine options from lists. And human beings, I innovate for a living, but my brain gets still using these techniques is a very effective way of generating new options, right?
And I think it's like, I've been reflecting on it, and I also triggered in one of our previous conversation, but it's kind of like a combination of things colliding. But I think at some point I was watching you guys on another channel talk about different card decks, and the idea of tarot came up, and I found it very, very compelling, and I started looking into that a little bit. And don't worry, we're not going to light any candles or incense now, maybe later for a different stream. But the thing is, what I liked, and I think there's a leap, because the thing is, you look at the cards and you do an interpretation. It's kind of, it's a link, with lack of a better word, to your creativity, right? It's like a And the thing is, the cards trigger that thinking. And I think a lot of the cards that I review, for example, the intention is not to give you the answers, it helps you seek them out. Because in a lot of times where we work, and I mean, I equate it to where I'm at now, is like, I used to be in a very creative space in my previous life. And then I moved to a more structured space. So what do we have now to... I can't just go and have 7 beers over lunch and then come up with ideas. You need other ways, and I found card decks to really work with that. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
100%. Like the whole idea of realizing, I go back to my meal example. You pick from a smaller and smaller menu option. You order the same beer, you order the same food, right? And you're also influenced by people around you. You're in a meeting, people ask you to vote. The social pressure, if you vote knowing other people's data, is you lock into less and less options. No one says, hey, I think of something completely different. That takes a lot of courage. Stand up in front of the group and say, no, that's the way we should go. That wasn't.
You don't want to go there.
No.
I see what you did, and it's going to end up somewhere if you've been following anything that was going on in the news now. But
I just saw that. I saw myself on the screen over there. So it's hard to be different. Even I live and breathe being different, but even I fall into the trap of conformity. So people who don't consider themselves creative are more and more trapped in that existence, right? And card decks are a wonderful lubricant. Lots of people use card decks to icebreakers. One can hate the term, but people use it as a kind of gaming mechanic, right? And I said that there, like, games are, why do we love card decks, right? Just as before we drill into the technicalities of it, they're game-like.
Yep.
Right. So if you walk into an HR meeting that's like, you're going to do some team building, everyone's arms crossed, no, we're not. You're going to ask me how I feel, and I'm not doing that, right? So the game, so they get past your resistance, right? You think you're playing. And I speak from this authority from someone who's created a board game that gets people to talk, and there's not a rule in the game that says you have to speak. But nobody plays the game in silence because the game leverages so much psychology. It's never played in silence. That's the magic of the game, right?
Yeah.
But understanding that, that is the wonderful thing when you bring a game to the table, you bring everyone with a different mindset. They're not thinking work. The other thing that's really important about card decks is they're messy. You throw them around, they're tactile, they're not ordered. Everything in life, look at our internet. It's 4 little boxes all in a row,
It's
lined up, click, scroll, right? Chaos is pleasurable. Chaos gives you greater ideas, and you can combine stuff and mess them up, right? And non-sequential. People write books in a linear fashion, but that's so flawed in 2025, right?
Yeah.
People jump to the chapters they're interested in. They bought the book for a chapter, not the whole book. No one wants to read 130,000 words to get something.
I also
right?
think, Nick, for example, one word that isn't there that I think is important to add is accessible. Because I don't know if you've, from my past, I've explored a couple in companies where you look at some of these advanced kind of, there is corporate or enterprise board games, but usually the licensing, the costing, if you're just a facilitator who wants to do something more interesting, the price goes up. But the thing is, because I was reflecting on some of the conversations we had and also going through the stream, buy card decks, and I think the fact that they are so accessible. So just to give people and also get your reaction. So for example, one of our mutual geeks on cards, I'll probably hate if I say that, but the artifact cards, right, which is just basically empty cards, right? You create your own cards, which I found very compelling. And then also just to latch on to your comment about the kind of randomness, the combination. For example, there's a card deck that I'm also looking at from him where it gives you an idea of what you can do with these ideas. Choose how to make the first mark.
Right.
There's all these
that's
kind of
undeckable too, by the way.
Just saying, we're going to get into that soon.
Yeah.